Welcome to SparkMap. SparkMap is built and run by a team of data people who collect, clean, and aggregate data from reliable secondary sources. We make these data available through two powerful data tools, the Assessment and Map Room. Need to build a community needs assessment or gather more data about your community? Use SparkMap to spend less time researching and more time implementing positive change. The following webinar will provide examples of how you can use SparkMap to learn more about your area.
Hi, and welcome to SparkMap. I'm Shay Morrison, a communication specialist here. Today, I'm going to be digging into some of our most popular soil layers in the map room. We'll start by looking at the latest version of the National Commodity Crop Productivity Index 3.0, also known as the NCCPI, to discuss how to use it and interpret it. Then, we will add and interpret a few other soil layers to help add context to the NCCPI report, such as soil boundaries, soil loss tolerance, hydrologic soil groups, and soil taxonomy order. All of the layers that we'll be discussing today are updated annually by their sources and on SparkMap. They're particularly helpful to aid in the process for natural resource planning, land management, and land valuation. Let's go ahead and get started. So as you can see, to start off, I have the SparkMap site open. And today, all of the layers that we are going to talk about are in the map room. So we are going to go ahead and open it by coming over to the Get Started tab, clicking on it or hovering over it, and then scrolling down and creating a map. Once we do so, we are prompted to add our data to the map with this pop-up box. Since I know what I'm looking for today, I am going to go ahead and search our keyword NCCPI and then click on this 3.0 layer that was updated in 2022. So now I press Add to Map and we'll see it populate. Before we jump into interpreting the NCCPI, let's talk a little bit more about it and what it is. The NCCPI 3.0 is a national index that determines how productive soil in a particular area is likely to be without irrigation. The productivity of the soil is based on estimated yields for 4 different commodity crops, which include corn, soybeans, small grains, and cotton. Soil productivity is then determined by whichever crop is rated the highest. And the highest rated crop is chosen because that takes into consideration things like climate, weather patterns, and other factors that might impact non-irrigated crop production in a specific area. And then if you're looking for this type of information for any data layer you might be using, you can go ahead and select the ellipses over here next to the layer name, press Data Info, and you'll see that information and more, as well as things like release cycle, how often you can expect it to be updated on SparkMap, the different data geographic units included, source, and source description. So there's a lot of great information that you might be looking for by selecting that Data Info button. Now I want to jump a little bit more closely into the map. So when you click on an area of the map, a little information box will pop up. And for the NCCPI, you'll see lots of different information, including the primary soil type of the area, a maximum productivity index score on a scale of 0 to 1.0, the maximum productivity crop, and then also the number of acres included in the area that you selected. So if I zoom all the way into that parcel, we'll see that it's a pretty small area within the state of Illinois that I had clicked on. So this is the boundaries of that parcel of land that this index rating pertains to. I wanted to talk a little bit about interpreting the NCCPI index score. So like I said, it's scored from 0.0 to 1.0, and the higher number includes higher productivity. So right here, this piece of land has a maximum productivity when it's not irrigated of 0.632. And if we look at our legend over here, that would be moderately high. But if we click on this parcel next to it, we can see a index score of 0.806. So that would make it highly productive. So we can see that even within a relatively small area, several factors can make a piece of land vary in terms of its expected productivity. And then I also wanted to go ahead and point out that in that piece of land in Illinois, the NCCPI is based off of corn. However, if we go over here to Montana and we click on a piece of land, this productivity is based off of small grains. And again, that just takes into account things like weather patterns, geographical features, and different things that will change what type of commodity crop would thrive in that area. So this is a pretty basic overview of the NCCPI, but if you're interested in learning a little bit more information about it or how to interpret and use it, I would recommend checking out the news section of our website and then looking at our blog, as we've written a couple of in-depth pieces about it. So next, we are going to talk about 4 different soil layers that help to add some additional context when making land valuation or management decisions. In the map room again, if I go ahead and select the Add Data button and search our keyword soil, we are going to go ahead and select the most recent 2022 versions of soil boundaries, soil loss tolerance, hydrologic soil group, and soil taxonomy order. And I wanted to point out that, as you can see, many of these layers have multiple years. We are going to go ahead and select the 2022 version because it is the most recent. However, we do keep older versions in case you want to see the historical data. When you do so, make sure that you're taking careful consideration into how geographical boundaries and data collection methods might have changed over time. So we are going to add those to our map. And then, since we just added a lot of information, I am going to zoom out a little bit so you can see. And I am going to come over here and uncheck each of these layers. And what that does is it turns off their presence on the map, so it makes things a little bit easier to see. If you did want to look at multiple layers, so I just turn those 2 back on, I recommend going to our Tools tab, scrolling down to Map Tools, and using, not the Mask tool, though that is very helpful, the Swipe Layer tool, and this will allow you to go back and forth and compare layers. This is especially helpful if you're looking at the same layer across multiple years. I like seeing how things change with it. So I did want to point that out. Okay, so I'm going to come back over and turn all of the layers off. And the first one we are going to talk about is the soil boundaries layer. So I am going to zoom into Columbia, Missouri. That's where we are located. And I have turned this layer on. And so you can see all of these yellow squiggly lines. But this layer is showing the boundaries of different soil types in an area. So when you click on an area of the map that you're interested in, you'll see this blue border show up. And that is the border around the area that you've clicked on. And it demonstrates the soil type, which is most prominent in the area, and then also how many acres in your community or within this boundary are included. So that's interesting if you're looking for boundaries of land or soil. So I'm going to unclick that and go ahead and turn on the soil loss tolerance layer and zoom out a little bit more. This layer depicts the maximum average annual soil loss that will allow the current production level to be maintained. So this data is reported as tons per acre, and the T values range from 1 to 5 acres, which is about twice the area of a Manhattan city block. The lower that a t-value is, the more sensitive that area is to soil loss, whereas areas with higher t-values can sustain more soil loss before productivity is impacted. So when you click on an area of the map, it will give you information including the dominant condition of the soil, its loss tolerance factor on a scale of 1 to 5, and then the acreage of the land. This dominant component percentage is also important because it's telling you what percent is composed of this dominant soil type, and that can change the overall loss tolerance of an area. So it's important to consider. And again, as we see here, this parcel that I selected has a soil loss tolerance factor of 5, which if we look over here is the highest rating. And so it's considered to be pretty tolerant to loss and be able to maintain its current productivity levels. Okay, the third layer that we are going to look at is this hydrologic soil group. And so go ahead and adding that. This data estimates the amount of runoff from precipitation when soils are not protected by any vegetation. So based on the data collected, a rating of A through D is given to a piece of land. Soils rated A have the lowest runoff potential, and that's because water typically flows freely through the soil. On the other end, soils rated D have a high runoff potential, and that's because the water typically can't move through the soil very easily. If the soil has a combined rating, as you see over here, like A/D or B/D, the first rating is for drained areas and the second would be for undrained areas. So again, when you click on the map, you'll see the overall soil group rating, and that is based on this dominant condition that's stated in the map unit name. And then the last layer that we are going to discuss today is the soil taxonomy order. So we're going to turn that back on. And this layer provides some information on the most dominant characteristic of soil in the area. So some examples of dominant characteristics might include prevalent vegetation, the type of parent material, or climate variables that are important. And once you've added this layer to your map, I really suggest that you obviously click on the area of interest. And this will tell you your taxonomy order dominant condition. But for this layer, I think it's really helpful to go over here and select that data info, because you can look at the descriptions and the dominant conditions and find more information about the 12 soil orders that are included in this layer. That way you'll be able to learn a little bit more about the taxonomy order of the area if you're not already familiar. So that's a pretty quick overview of the different soil layers that I think are useful in terms of land evaluation and management decisions. Overall, the map layers discussed can help you understand many facets of soil on a piece of land that you're looking to value or manage. However, it's important to remember that these indexes alone cannot account for how the land has been managed in the past, which could permanently alter soil characteristics. Therefore, while these map layers provide a great base of information, nothing replaces getting your feet on the ground and your hands in the dirt when making land management and valuation decisions.